Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Opinion Opportunity. I am your host, Don Gringo, and today we are currently very lucky, and I'm really excited because I didn't know how this was going to turn out, but we have a legitimate erotica author with us, Kyle Canon. So, Kyle, please introduce yourself. That's all you got for me, just 15 novels? I mean, come on, they got to be some good selling books if he wrote 15 of them. Kyle, while I was waiting to talk to you, the nagging thing in the back of my mind, um, whose microphone's off, baby? Oh, she's saying someone's microphone is off. She's saying your microphone is off. I think you're too low, Kyle. Is that better, baby? Of course, we have a yes, baby, and his mic. Oh, I don't think it's gonna be us. I mean, your audio is good as far as there, so I don't know. I have no clue what she's saying. Maybe it's low. Let me see if I can do something here with us to help us out. Is yours muted on your side by chance? No. That's right. That's right. So yeah, I think we may have to start this over if she can't hear you. He says saying I can hear you, but I can't hear him at all. Okay, well I'll be here. What we'll do is we're recording it anyway. So worst case scenario, we'll start the conversation, and like I said, I'll just take down the live and put up the upload of our conversation. It's not a big deal. Okay. Yeah, come on in and come sit over here. I can't. Hello, hello, hello. I mean, mine's fine, right? Why isn't it picking up? This is like the third goddamn video that we're having problems. Webcam HD. I'm gonna need you to listen. Okay, let's try it again.
Can you hear me now?
That's good.
Okay. Is volume better?
The volume's not better. Well,
Hmm.
it's better. All right, it's better. Finally.
Okay, good. Good.
So external microphone works really good there, Kyle. We're gonna get you tech savvy here. Don't you worry. So okay, let's start it over. So you're an author. You got 15 novels underneath your belt. Obviously, they must be really good if you got 15 underneath your belt.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. And I probably undersell myself too much, but my last novel, my last story did great. Pre-sales were amazing. And I actually broke the top 100 in erotica books on Amazon, at least on my opening day. So I consider that a good check mark.
I would definitely say so. But obviously, this is the first time we're getting together, and any of my audience would have recognized, seen you. So why the mask?
So the short version of that is a lot of my stories are based on truth, and a lot of my stories are based on things my wife and I have done. And we have very conservative friends and family in our life prior to this, and we don't want to. The big thing is we don't want to hurt them, and we've got, both of us have family that would run screaming to the hills if they found out we attended nudist resorts, much less any of the other stuff that we've done.
Well, that definitely kills the thing we just were previously trying to talk about. Does life imitate art, or does art imitate life? I guess you've got that all wrapped up. But just so obviously you're wearing a mask for your own protection. So maybe if if it makes you feel better, I decided that I could help out here, right? I could help out here. You got the top half, I'll get the bottom half. How about that?
That'll work. That'll work.
Yeah, I picked this thing up, but I figured when I heard you were wearing a mask, I said, you know what, it'll be a funny joke.
Yeah,
So
it's something my wife and I have been doing. We've also done some video podcasts, and we both have worn masks for that, and for the same reason, and we have for a long time, since I've been doing the writing. And Lily also does all of my audiobooks, and she does audiobooks for other authors. So we've got a vested interest in keeping our superhero identity secret.
well, I got to be honest. When I came across you, um, and I'm not saying I'm old. I'm 43, for God's sakes. But I never, and I'm obviously of a different generation than you. We have previously discussed. You're what, in your 50s? You
Yeah,
said.
yeah.
So we're of a different generation because of at least a 10-year age gap here. But how does somebody like a man? I've never met anyone. I would say my generation is a lot more liberal than your generation. How does a man get into writing erotica?
God, do we have 2 or 3 hours?
Short, condensed version. How about that?
So the short version is God, I don't know that there is a short version. First of all, I will say there's a lot more men writing erotica than you might think. A
That just
lot of
baffles
men,
my mind when you say that. We had that when we briefly met. You said what? At
yeah,
least 7 that you know?
at least. We have a podcast that we do called Speak Seductively, and we interview a
And
lot of
by the way,
independent.
everyone, everything's in the description, so you can reach out to
Awesome.
Kyle and his wife. You can follow them. Everything's in the description. I'm sorry, but I want to make sure we give you that shameless plug.
No, thank you. And I'll add a little kudo to it. I just learned that we were voted one of the top 24 erotica podcasts in 2021. So
Okay. Or
Yeah, yeah, not
you got the books to back it up, right? And I guess
well.
the life experience to go with it.
Well, so the answer to your question is it goes back about 10 years ago. My wife and I were on vacation in Hawaii, and we were exploring Oahu and found a nudist beach on the North Shore. And my wife had done some modeling before, and she'd done some very artistic nudes in college and all of that kind of stuff. She was always the more daring of the two of us, but so we literally stumbled across this beach, had walked a mile from our car to get there, and decided, what the hell, let's just go ahead and stay. And I dropped my swimsuit, and then we've never looked back. So
that's
so
a hell of a decision. I'm just saying it's a hell of a decision. I'm just going to drop trow and yeah, I'm never looking back. Everything's good, right? I mean,
well, and that's where the writing comes in, because we did that, and we went back to that beach every day for the next 2 weeks, because we found it liberating and natural, and it didn't feel weird after the first 2 seconds. And there were other people there, so it was fitting in with the group that was there. But the writing part
that's
came.
not what I would guess. That's not the majority of people would not feel that that's liberating. I mean, they would not even get to the point where they would step foot on the beach. So who you would say your wife is the more daring, how the hell does she even, well, I guess, yeah, you were following your wife, well, not your wife at the time, but I guess, but you guess, yeah, I guess anything for a woman, right? So, I mean,
Well, actually, I was the one who, when we got down there, she was ready to leave, and I'm like, "No, why? It's a beautiful beach. Let's stick around." And I decided I was going to go natural with everybody else who was down there. There were about 30, maybe 40 other people at the beach at the time, and I remember she just laughed, and then she lost her suit, and we spent the rest of the day there. And like I said, after the first couple of minutes, it's you forget that you forget you're nude.
yeah, but how do you go from nude beach to writing erotica? Now, understand the title I put on this was "Is erotica porn?" And
Right.
obviously you believe it's not. So where's the fine line between erotica and porn, and how do you stay within that boundary in writing? Because we went from beach to 10 years later, I got 15 novels. I'm doing extremely well. Got a podcast that's up and coming. Where did that come from at 40 something years old? And all of a sudden we flipped the switch.
So we got into the nudist naturist thing, and there were a lot of opportunities in Southern Florida. So we started going to a lot of nudist resorts. And during the course of that, and this is where trying not to make the story long, we did dabble in swinging, and that was about 5 years ago. And we always tell people that we consider ourselves nudists and naturists first, and swingers a distant second, but we did it. And I decided,
So with that,
Lily,
because you left that there. I want to
yeah,
leave that. I mean, it left that hanging. I'm gonna grab that for a quick
sure.
second. You left that hanging. So you said dabbled, right? You dabbled. That was the word you used. So obviously you're done. So is it a comfort factor? Is it a security factor? I mean, what is it, a relationship factor where it's just introducing something that may not be positive for the relationship? I mean,
Those are
you
great
said
questions.
dabbled.
So to answer that, my first novel is basically Lily and my life that led up to us getting into swinging and how that happened. And I wrote it because, and Lily and I talked about it. I was trying to figure out where this came from, because neither one of us had, that ultra liberal kind, what you would expect people to have as a background who get into swinging or who try it. So I wrote the book. It was almost journaling.
Well, I was about to say, what'd you do? Just say, baby, I'm going to write down our memoirs. I'm going to open up the diary and we're just going to put everything but our names in there. I mean,
Well, no, I also I write in other genres. I write science fiction, and
Okay,
I
so
was
you've been an
hitting
author for a very long time.
for a while. Yeah. And so my thing was I was hitting a writer's block and not able to get finished with the book I was writing. And a favorite author of mine, I remember reading an article that he wrote about him getting in writer's block. He writes military science fiction, and he said he switches over and writes erotica under a pen name, and it kind of loosens up his thought processes. And I thought, you know, what the hell, perfect timing. I'm thinking about this. We've been doing this for a little while now, and it's in my head, so I may as well write it down. Now, I changed a ton, but my thing was, if it sells, I didn't tell Lily that I was writing it. But I
Oh,
changed
okay.
I changed so much in it. Nobody would recognize us in it.
Hmm.
But I decided if the damn thing sells, we'll see what I'll tell her and tell her that it sells. So I put it out there, and sure enough, 3 or 4 days later, it starts selling, and it starts selling like crazy. So I go and I tell her, and I give her the book to read, and she said two things after she read. She's like, "Oh my God, that's our life story." No, nobody's really going to know because I've changed enough of it up, but that's us. And she said, and the second thing she said was, "You really should have let me edit it," because she's great at editing. So that since then, and I told her the book took off. Sales have been going like crazy. It's called The
Well,
Photographer's Story.
but wasn't that like, like one of those moments where it was like make or break in a relationship? You decided to write a book about your life and sex life, especially. And yes, you changed enough, but that was like, hey, baby, this has already been sold. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people have already read this thing. Let me know what you think. I mean, that's I mean,
See, and that's
my
the thing.
wife, who was in the other room, would have slapped the hell out of me if not walked out the door. I mean, I'd have been in some pain, my friend, some serious pain.
It was one of those things where I didn't worry about her reaction at all. We talk and we share everything. And part of something you were getting to earlier about, are we out of swinging because of how it impacts the relationship and all of that. We got into it after talking for a few years that, hey, let's give this a try. Writing the book, I wasn't worried. I wasn't worried at all about her being upset that I wrote it. I was more worried that it wouldn't sell, and then I would have to tell her, okay, I wrote this pile of crap and nobody's buying it, and deal with that end. But she didn't mind at all.
That's amazing. I'm sorry, but that's amazing, and it's just so much. No, 'cause, I mean, and I'm not totally conservative by nature, and I'm not totally like out there crazy by nature, though. Depends on who you ask. But I mean, just you got 10 years or so. I mean, my friend, and I mean, I don't know if I would have gone down that road, but that's just simply amazing. So you've had success at doing this. You're on your 15th book. You've been in the life for now how long?
I'd say about 6 years now.
So you were actually writing about it well before you were in it.
I wrote the first novel shortly, probably 8 or 9 months after we got into the lifestyle. I mean, they were close together.
That's just amazing. That is like crazy. So,
But
so
we had been nudists before then. So
no,
I'm
and I
not sure.
understand that, but I'm saying you
Okay.
wrote the book before you got into the lifestyle, because before you were saying we're just nudists and naturalists, and
Mhm.
but that's a big difference, And then writing your life story, and now you're in the lifestyle. I'm not going to say full blown, but I'm just saying you're in the lifestyle for what you want to get from it and what part of the
Right.
community you want to be part of, and that is just absolutely So did one thing lead to the other?
Yeah. I mean, so I also do a lot of amateur photography, and Lily was posing for me, and we did some nudes, and we ended up selling those on places like Fine Art America and other places. But um, it was a long progression, many years of conversation, neither one of us trying to push or coerce the other into it, but we'd meet people. For instance, we made some friends at one of the nudist resorts that were into swinging. We never did it with them, but their advice was, as a couple, always talk about what your comfort levels are and why you would be doing this. Don't do it at, don't, I'm trying to think of don't do it for the wrong reasons. And we've met people who are trying to get into it because their sex lives as a couple are terrible. And so one or the other is thinking, well, if I push my spouse into bringing other people into our bedroom, that's going to make our sex better. And
I
it's not.
was always skeptical about that philosophy. By the way, Kyle, your light went out, so you're pretty dark on one side.
Sorry, I had
That's okay.
my other computer screen up.
That's okay. Listen,
Yeah.
it works well. It gives you that kind of bluish hue. It looks really good. But no, I mean, I was always very like taken back by that philosophy. If you're not good together, how are you introducing something else gonna make it better? I mean, it's almost like having a kid in the marriage because you're just tired of each other. You need something to bring you together. It's like,
Right.
Wait a minute, why would you do that?
And that's what these friends said, and others, as we got into the lifestyle, were had a similar philosophy, and it fit with us, that you don't do this if your relationship is damaged or there are issues with it, because it's just going to make it worse. And over the years, we've met people who have destroyed their marriages doing this because one or the other, for instance, we met a guy from I think he said he was from Tennessee, and he was telling us that his first marriage broke up because his wife pushed him into swinging, and all she wanted to do was be with other women, and then he was left as a wallflower. And it finally, he just had enough and ended it. But that, he knew before they even got into swinging that their relationship was on the rocks. But he, like your kid analogy, he thought, well, this might save the marriage, and it won't. I mean, it just won't work.
Yeah, that's just absolutely something else, man.
Well, and so a part of why I started writing more, and Lily and I do the podcast, we promote authors who take a sex positive approach to life. And we take that approach ourselves, that
Maybe you
your
should
sex
also,
life
for everybody else though, Kyle, describe what you consider the definition of sex positive to be.
something that is having a good sex life between two consenting adults, where you're doing things that are not hurting yourselves or each other. And by hurting, I mean, mentally, physically. And I know somebody out there is probably thinking, well, what about BDSM and the whips and the chains and that?
I was
kind
about
of
to
stuff?
say, I mean, really, that's a really open ended saying, because what me and you what would consider positive might be totally different. Now you're saying whatever you're both consensual with, but there are some people who would go a lot further than you and your wife, and that's
Sure.
positive for them.
Right. And if it works for them and it's not hurting others, then I don't care what they do. But for us, it's taking a healthy approach, and everybody's going to define it differently. You titled this about erotica and porn.
Is
And
erotica porn?
yeah, right, exactly. And one of the things I was going to say is, if you go back to the 60s, a Supreme Court justice was asked to define pornography, and I don't, not in those exact words. I think it was they used different phrase for it, but he said, I can't define pornography for you, but I know it when I see it. And it's been my belief for years that one person's erotica is going to be another person's pornography. Somebody's porn isn't even going to raise a needle for another person. So we all have to self-define. And where we draw the line is consenting adults and not doing harm. And here's an example, I guess. Uh, if you were to leave the room right now, go next door and have sex with your neighbor's wife, and your wife doesn't consent and her husband doesn't consent, is that wrong?
Well, I guess when it comes to our marriage, it's absolutely wrong, right? But if I made a choice and now the person made a choice, I guess it's right by those people, and that's one of the things I'm really trying to define, and that's why I don't like leaving things open ended or a very
Sure.
fine point. And I'll take the opposite approach. Is you know what what is it's different for every person. So
Well,
I guess the best way that I'm thinking you're trying to say it is if no one in that community gets hurt.
right.
So there's
So
four
in the
people in that community. As long as everyone's okay, then it's
Mhm.
okay.
And in the example I gave you, that Lily and I have been asked a lot about, is what you do cheating? And our response is no, because cheating means you're breaking the rules and you're sneaking around behind somebody else's back. What we do, we've defined rules, things that we're okay with, and it becomes hurtful if one or the other of us were to break those rules and guidelines. Like the example I gave you, to us, that is not a sex positive approach, even though you and your neighbor's wife may enjoy what you're doing, you're ultimately harming your relationship and her relationship, and you're hurting your spouse and her spouse. So that's not a sex positive approach. You may be enjoying it, but you're harming other people in doing it.
So let's so since I used the word community, and that's pretty much what your lifestyle basically is a community, because let's face it, it's not, for the most part around this country, it's not advertised, right? It's not put out there because there's a lot of stigmas that get associated, a lot of negative terms that get associated with some of these activities and things that go on, right?
Yeah.
So talk about the community. So how is it as a community? Because it's got to be very at sometimes awkward, like in life in general, where you may be at the lower end of the spectrum, but then hey, someone joins that community, they're a little bit more hardcore and at a higher higher end of the spectrum than some people are. I mean, it's got to be like any other community, but just not. I would say just not advertised personally.
It is, and there's varying degrees, and I think a lot of people don't get that. There are a lot of couples around the country, and I'm saying this tongue in cheek because we've met a lot of people who are very much like us, who don't go to swingers clubs, and don't go there. There's online swinger magazines and meetup spots and stuff like that, and there are people who do those things, but there are even more who don't, because it's not for them. Lily and I went to a swingers club twice, and we decided we're just not into the club scene. So, you know, sorry to my readers and everything, but
You'll write about it, but it's not for you.
well, and I'll write about, and honestly, I write about it in a positive way. But if anybody reads my stuff, most of it, I steer away from that because it's not in my comfort zone. But we've met a lot of people who um, take a long time to get into swinging with another couple, and it's like long-term dating. Only now there's four people involved, or six people involved. But there are, you there are whole communities. Anybody really curious, do some Google searches and look for news stories. CNN has done a ton. Fox News, all the major news organizations have done a ton of stories. And without naming names, I'll say um, there a local news station did a story about I'm going to call it an elderly community in Southern Florida that has tens and tens of thousands of people there. And the swinging community must be vast, but they go around with these shower loofahs on their golf carts, and different colors tell people are symbols for different things that they would do as a couple. So, but the reason the story hit the local news is because they were talking about STD rates, and that this community had the highest rate of STDs of any community in Florida.
But that I wouldn't say that would be. I mean, that wouldn't be typical throughout the community though, at large.
No, because most people who get into the life, there are a few rules that pretty much everybody follows. No means no. So whether you're a guy or a woman, if somebody approaches you and you say no, I'm not interested, then that's it. No harm, no foul. Pushing yourself on someone is an extreme negative. Um, but also using protected sex is a big deal, especially with anybody that we're with. That's I know of
I
some
just
people
thought
who
in
don't.
general it would have to be because again, like yourself and your wife and obviously other people I mean, you're not looking to hurt the other people who wouldn't approve that
Right.
is in your life. So obviously them hearing that an STD circulating within, it's obviously gonna bring, shame, embarrassment, and obviously highlight what's going on in your world. So that's why I was always like under the impression it's like I can't see it being rampant. It's almost like everyone thinks like adult porn stars have like the highest rate of STDs and everything in the world. And actually today, because of how the industry is, they're tested like all the freaking time.
All the
They
time.
have like lower rates than the rest of the country, the rest of the world, because they're tested all the time. That's like drug testing for them, like court ordered drug testing. Like, hey man, you got caught. You're piss testing every week, every day.
Mhm.
I mean, so yeah, I always have a very different perspective when I talk to people. It's like, no, I'm actually the opposite. I think it's going to be quite different in that aspect.
And I think that goes to there being different layers and levels in swinging, or I don't even know if I want to call it knowledge levels, but this community, the people there just may not care. But if you go to any of the clubs around the country or in Canada, they have very stringent rules about making sure that any kind of sexual contact is protected. So um, people who are into that know that and follow that as a general rule of thumb.
I would imagine so. You know what the funny thing is, and I should have mentioned it up front too. And when we originally talked, when I came across your name and I saw male erotica writer, and I was like, damn, know what movie popped into my mind? It's an older
I
movie. Uh,
Eyes Wide Shut.
was that one with Mickey Rourke?
Oh,
Remember
Pretty
Mickey Rourke
Woman.
did that one? It was like in Cuba, wherever the hell it was.
Oh,
He was that hotel owner. God, I'm gonna have to look it up now. Hold on.
Havana. No,
What's that?
I don't know.
I
I said Havana, but I
No, he was really. I can't, I left my phone in the other room. Anyways, it was a hell of a movie. More on voyeurism, in erotica than whatever. Like, but also he, made her, you know, part do games, and he wasn't. No, she wasn't realizing it was like all one big thing. But man, it was like that book, like that movie, like hit a bell. Like, man, that's like absolutely nuts. I remember that movie when I was like a teenager.
Mhm. Well, and that's there. Keep saying there's different levels to this. There are couples who just want to get together with another couple, stay with their spouse, but be in the same room and have sex in the same room, and that's all they would ever do.
Yeah, where's that movie? Mickey Rourke. I want to look that up because I know you've seen it. You
Yeah,
have to have seen it.
I'm
My
not a
lord.
huge movie person.
You're not a huge movie person. This is like straight out of your genre, and you're telling me you're not a huge movie person. Yeah, it's gotta be. It's gotta be there. I mean, it was. I mean, it was his early stuff too. Um, if you haven't seen this, you gotta watch this. It's like an oldie but goodie. I mean, you talking to you originally, this popped into my head like, oh my God, I can't believe I totally forgot that movie.
Right. Now I'm
Oh,
curious.
yeah, I know. God, it was when, where is it? I'm looking at it, but they never have everything in chronological order. Was it Body Heat? Was it Body Heat?
Didn't that have Sharon Stone?
No, that's not the one. This was a younger brunette. My God. I will find it for you and I will email it to you because I want to continue our conversation. But let me tell you, that was probably the closest thing I've ever seen to what I would think would be not porn, but
But
erotica.
erotica.
Like I mean, it's pretty much
Hmm.
like softcore porn. It was like just fell short. It had a
Yeah.
story, it had a plot, it had everything that I would expect would be in your book. You know what I mean? With the twists and the
Hmm.
turns and everything like that. I was like, oh my God. But it was visual. It was like, holy crap. When I was a kid, I was like, holy moly. I think that was one of the things that set me off in my exploration on a lot of stuff was I saw that movie, like, damn, that's kind of cool. I mean, it was like freak, and yeah, no, I mean, I don't know.
Okay, so I'm not much of a movie person, but since you got on the topic, one of the most erotic scenes I think I've ever seen in a movie. I think the movie was True Lies, Arnold Schwarzenegger and
Oh,
Jamie
Jamie
Lee
Lee
Curtis.
Curtis. Yeah, she was dancing in
So
the bedroom. He was sitting down there.
come
That's
on, that's erotic.
I think the problem was the comedy they threw in there, right? The comedic
Right.
parts they threw in the middle of that whole dance and we're falling down. But I'm talking
Well,
like,
playing with the tape recorder.
yeah, I mean, but seriously, with the straight no comedic value, I will get you that the name of that movie. Watch that for sure. That I
Yeah.
would tell you that will probably be like, yeah, that's probably the damn closest thing in video format that we're gonna probably say that is the novel, and that's why I was so excited because I remember that movie. As soon as I was talking, it's like, man, I remember that movie. So
Hmm.
you've been in it. You guys have been in it. You're successful at it. You got a podcast now, so you're talking to other authors, but you're talking about sex positive. So, I mean, it's not just other authors though. We've had a chance to talk previously a little bit. So who else are you talking to? And is it to expand your network? Is it expand your community? I mean, what are we?
I
What's the goal?
the goal is to get people to understand more about the life, not to get into it, not to expand it, but to understand that there are a lot of normal people who are doing this, that you would be shocked if you knew, like your friends, relatives, or coworkers are into it. So we've interviewed couples who are first timers, and they've seen me on social media, or they've read a book, and they get in touch, and we figure out they're legit. And so we talk to them about, why did you get into the lifestyle? What were your steps getting into it? um, we've interviewed we interviewed a couple that are technically, I guess you would call them, porn stars too now.
Are
That
we talking OnlyFans porn stars or are we talking like legit porn stars?
Pornhub porn stars.
Legit porn stars are
Yeah.
they're on legit websites like actual pornography websites.
Yeah, and they've been a couple. The way they tell it, they've been a couple since they were teenagers. Got into swinging and just kept going, and got into porn after that, or along with that. And that is part of how they live the lifestyle. Is they just see the doing the porn as another aspect of their swinging.
But let
Um,
me ask you a serious question on the opposite end of the spectrum, and this is for you personally. And I'm not saying there's no definitive answer today for you and your wife, but do you feel there's ever going to come a time when you're going to say, okay, I'm done? Like this is just me and you time? I mean, or is this like something that is like part of your world, part of your life, and it's just once it's there, it's there.
it's a good question, and it's something that we've talked about to other couples as well. Um, we haven't done anything in a couple of years now, and part of it is because again, it goes back to making sure your relationship is a healthy one. Um, uh, Lily and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. It's like our sex life with each other is great, has been great, always was great. So we don't have this need to go out there and add to it. We have enough fun as it is. Doesn't mean that, we have some good friends that if the timing were right and things worked out, that we wouldn't swap with them. But we don't, it's not an addiction that we need to get into. I don't know if that's answering your question or not.
No, it absolutely is. I mean, it's a choice, not a compulsion. It's something that
Right.
these guys are choosing to do by choice. But I guess, yeah. I mean, for you, it was just, hey, we've had our fun in the past couple of years, and we just don't need to do it right now. And but it's not. You're not saying it would never happen again. You're just saying that it's not right now.
Yeah, it's not we've, again, everybody can do what works for them, but my personal feeling is I've met couples who have this desperate need to put another notch on the bedpost, and that's not us, and that wouldn't work for us. So we don't go there, and I've seen some of those couples break up because I think they turn it into a compulsion. But I would also say I know a lot of people in my very conservative professional life who've gone out and had affairs and destroyed their families when it's found out, um, and then make up, try to fix it, and turn around and do the same thing over again because they don't know how to control it.
So we're talking about couples though, but I would imagine there's a lot of individuals who try to get into the lifestyle itself. I mean, um,
Yeah, a lot of guys. There's a term out there right now, unicorns, and women, single women who make themselves who look for a couple to date, and they all have varying reasons. But I was just reading an article one wrote for a magazine, and her thing was she's not meeting any decent single guys. She's bi-curious is the way she described herself, and she started dating other couples as a unicorn because it was a safer experience for her, physically as well as emotionally, because she knew she wasn't there to take the place of either one of them. But um, as I read the article, she's got one couple that she's a regular girlfriend with, and they'll go out on dates and things like that. Um, but I do think there's probably more single guys out there, and
so it is gender bias in your opinion. That it's mostly a male when it's an individual thing.
I would say so, but I think that the number of single women out there is definitely growing. A couple of as I said earlier, we describe ourselves as nudists first and do the swinging second. We've gone to nudist resorts where they follow the American Association of Nude Recreation, which is, there's no public displays of they've been around since the 40s or 50s.
Never heard of
Um,
them, but okay.
but their rules and their guidelines, basically, if you go to a resort that follows them, they call themselves, they don't want any public displays of affection or any overt sexual or covert sexual activity going on. I mean, whatever you do behind your own closed doors is fine. But Lily and I have been to places where they follow those guidelines, but they'll allow singles to come in, and she's been hit on by single guys, and we try to we rebuff that. I mean, we're not into that. So, but much more than we've seen single women at clubs.
So let me
or
ask you a
resorts.
question because obviously a lot of writers got to do a lot of research on their topic. So it must be very difficult for you with a lot of new, a lot of new terminology coming out. I mean, how are you gonna, like for instance, one term that I recently came by was hot wife, in which I totally do not agree with. But I mean, some of this new stuff coming out, I mean, it's even got to throw you for a loop. I mean, and if you got to
It
write about
does.
it, I mean, how the hell are you going to do research on that topic?
So Lily and I have talked about this because one of the big things that's out there right now, and I won't write about it, but the pseudo incestuous stuff. If you look at some of the top 50 erotica books, they're like stepdaddy and daughter. You know, that's the theme, and I just find that kind of creepy. So, but they are incredibly popular, and
Is there a
they are
reason for that
selling.
though? What's your
I,
opinion on that? I mean, just again, we're saying your opinion. We're not saying fact here. We're just saying your opinion on that.
I do think that more and more people are looking for. I think our society in general, I think, is always looking for something to get overly emotional about. Whether it's the news, they want to pick a story and just get super angry about it. But for me, I think that there are a lot of people who just want. I'm trying to think of the right word. I'm kind of at a loss. I'm a writer and I'm at a loss for words right now.
I'm thinking
I
more like a risk junkie. Like they already went to a certain level. They got to take it
sure
to a second level. They got to take. You need to really be excited. I mean, like maybe they're kind of on that path of I want to say self destruction, but no, it just doesn't
adrenaline
do it no more.
junkies or yeah, it's like any to me, and I'm trying not to come across as negative, overly negative on it, but I think
I think you
there.
should have an honest opinion on it. I mean, if there's something that you, as a writer, as someone who lives in the lifestyle, and I'm not saying you live every part, and neither have you. So I'll make sure anyone who ever watches this, when there's no insinuations here, but you who participates where I don't, right? I mean, I think would have the right to have. I'm not going to say a more valid opinion, but I would say a more experienced and intellectual opinion than even I could have. So
I've
I
had
think you're
to.
allowed to have your opinion.
Yeah, well, and I've had debates with other authors about this very thing, because to me those books are not sex positive as I define it, because they're really setting up a situation where somebody who's in a authority position is somehow using that authority to um, take advantage of in this case the stepdad taking advantage of the stepdaughter. But and to me that is not a long-term positive relationship. I mean, that can't end well. So I don't know how you can define that as a positive or a sex positive topic.
Well, I guess the only thing I have to say, and it's not that I agree or disagree here. Again, I have no say in this, but is it because you feel that it's laying the foundation for people to let it roll over into their real life and not keep it a fantasy life? I mean, everyone's got dark secrets or dark desires, or I mean,
Mhm.
not everyone is pure and innocent. We're not. It's pure. That mean we're human nature. We all have
No,
something,
yeah.
and that's all there is to it. But I mean, is this something that you're afraid in like today's society, like if they start reading this stuff, that it's not going to be left to fantasy anymore?
I yeah, I mean, I think there's an element of that, because I do believe that it's an I've the authors I've talked to who write about it say they're just writing about fantasies and it's not reality and it's not this and that. And I get that. And I'm not saying stop writing it, but I'd much I'm throwing a precautionary note out there that it's a little unnerving that those books are the most popular things out there right now. And I'm wondering what that says about our society, that we have a lot of people who are fantasizing about um, that kind of situation where somebody in authority um, takes advantage of somebody younger than them, even though in the books. So Amazon has a rule that you can't write about, you can't be overtly incestuous. That's why the stepdaddy stepmommy thing comes in. But they also have a rule about you can't write characters having sex that are under 18. So I've also seen a lot of the books where they're borderline, teacher having sex with student, but the student's over 18, so it's okay.
College student. That's all.
Right. Well, the author I was talking to, the kid just turned 18 and now he's going to a finishing school, and one of his tutors at the finishing school is in her 20s and has her way with him. Or the flip side is he has his way with her. To me, it doesn't feel healthy, because it's you said for me, for my opinion.
I'm going to say I'm not saying healthy, but I mean, I was a kid and I remember having some teachers who were younger in their 20s going, damn. I mean, sorry, even me as a man was like, damn. I mean, I would if I could. So,
been there, done that. But
okay, so
but what happens to that teacher if they actually carry through with it?
oh no, I'm not saying like it happened or what not have you. I'm just saying though, for a writer writing it and about fantasy, I'm saying that to me that seems a little bit more like authentic human nature, especially on the male sides, who's going after the teacher type of situation. I mean, shit, I was not even 18 and I looked at some of my teachers, like, substitute teachers that would come in and go like, damn. Like,
Yeah.
wow.
No, and that's, I'm not telling those authors stop writing what you're writing, but for me, you asked me personally.
Yeah.
I find an issue with that, because I guess I do look at the underlying motivations, and I understand people would look at some of what I write and go, oh my God, I can't believe he's writing about that. And, oh my God, I can't believe he and his wife may have done those things. I get that, because we all come at it from different perspectives, but I stand by my beliefs that sex positivity is doing things that do no harm to consenting adults.
I guess I'm just looking at it from the fact when you say consenting adults and no situations. I mean, first off, I look at it, and I guess because I've never been in the lifestyle like you, so I have a little bit more of a skewed perspective, and I fully admit that I haven't experienced what you've experienced to understand what you understand. But for me, I mean, if I looked at it from a book, the first thing I'm going is, you know, did the author really do this? I mean,
Yeah.
right. I'm not thinking that. I'm either it's a great book, it's a bad book, or there are some books I've read going like this is a lot of detail for a book that's supposed to be fantasy. Like this is like a lot of detail. And we're not talking dragons and knights and shit like that. I mean, you're talking like, wait a minute here. I'll give you that. There are some head scratchers, but for the most part, I mean, I'm sure the people picking up your books until they talk to you aren't thinking that you and your wife are. I mean, I didn't know it until you told me.
Yeah.
So I wasn't thinking that Kyle Canon and Lily Cannon were out there on the swinging scene, hitting the clubs back in the day, and started off on nudist beaches and still doing swinging their thing. Listen, even I didn't go there. So I don't know if that perspective of everybody's looking at it, and I can be pretty twisted in my thinking. Ask my wife. I mean, that's why we get along. But I mean,
Well,
I can be
she's
twisted.
listening right now, right? So,
Absolutely. I don't hide anything from my wife. She's Mexican. If I hide anything, she'll slit my throat in the middle of the night. Absolutely. And then she'll cross the border and no one will get her. So I'm screwed either way. But regardless of the fact, no, I know I'm twisted in my thinking, but again, I don't try to make the, first bad assumptions when I'm talking to people that, hey, this book or this person, I got to give people a chance to prove me wrong, right?
oh, I don't
Unless you're
disagree
telling
with
me
that.
you know some author's secrets that we don't know about.
I may know a few authors' secrets.
Okay. Well, okay.
But well, and I'll say this: a lot of the authors that we've interviewed um, don't don't live the lifestyle, so their writing is fantasy based,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
That'd be
I think
me
another
trying to
thing
write
with
what you do. Totally fantasy. Absolutely fantasy. Never been to a nudist beach. So if my story started out in a nudist beach, absolutely goddamn lying. Now, I never said I never went skinny dipping or anything, just never hung out on a nudist beach, you know?
yeah, well, and for me, I could not have written this if I hadn't experienced it, because especially now in hindsight, looking back, I'm like, I wouldn't know what the hell to say. I just I wouldn't know what to write. But I think listening to some of the people who've read my books, the fact that I've experienced it lets me write at a depth that others can't, and I'll give myself credit for that. I can get into the story more. I can get into the feelings of the characters more, because I've actually been there and experienced it. Jumping back a little, one of the big things, right? The taboo writing is real popular right now, and that would be the daddy figures and the teachers and that kind of stuff. It
Yeah, but taboo is a very general term. There's a lot of
it
things
is.
depending on society could be taboo, depending what part of society you're in. I mean, it could be interracial is taboo. It could be, gay is taboo. I mean, there's a lot of things that could be considered taboo.
And I think, and the funny thing is, and maybe this is a interesting way to go with this, but 10 years ago, I would say interracial and other things like that would be considered taboo. 10,
Mhm.
15, 20 years ago. Now they're nothing.
So you're saying I'm showing my age.
Absolutely.
No,
Well,
listen, I understood saying going into that. I'm just saying I know back in the day, man, taboo was a very general term. I mean, very
yeah.
general term.
And I think the
So,
term changes with the times. And I think that's part of the issue with trying to define or explain what is erotica and what is porn, because what I use men's magazines back in the 80s and 90s, like Penthouse, Hustler, that kind of thing, they could not show penetration. That was just forbidden. You couldn't
right,
do that.
right.
But um, but they were still considered porn magazines. I saw something the other day that kind of made me chuckle. Through the 90s, they pushed that barrier, and until by the 90s, and then the internet came around, so who cared? But they were showing penetration in the magazines in the 90s.
Yep.
And so they had pushed that bar for pornography much further than it had been. The article that I was reading went through like the history of the men's magazines from the 60s on, and really kind of drew a line at 19. I think there was a Hustler edition in 1992 that showed penetration or something, or
And that
close
changed
to it.
everything.
And they said everything prior to that should be called erotica, because it wasn't showing the actual act. It was implying everything. But after that point, there was no implication anymore. It was close-ups of genitals, and that was it. And
So since you said that, let me ask a question, because you're the author and you made that statement. So let me ask you a question. So, do you believe anything shy of penetration is erotica?
um I would lean in that direction. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, we're not gonna. We're make it very clear. We're
Yeah.
generalizing. We're not saying anything that includes serious pain or hurting people
Mhm.
who don't want it. I'm just saying, like, do you feel that? So, for instance, strip clubs are erotica.
I would say, yeah, I would agree.
So then, what's burlesque dancing?
I would also consider that erotica.
But one is
But
more of a definite extreme situation because burlesque does not
absolutely.
show no the areas where if you can go to a strip club where it's top and bottom, you can see everything.
Hmm.
So again, I mean that's you're saying so there's two extreme forms of erotica right there that you're saying falls under that category.
Yeah, I think you have to have a zone. And I fully believe that somebody could come up to me and say, and make the argument that, well, burlesque is, let's call burlesque artistic erotica. They could come up with their own thing because they're not showing, like you said, they're not showing everything. But then strippers, we just have to call that pornography because everything's on display. I would support somebody having that as their opinion. It's not my opinion. For me, porn happens when there's sexual penetration, call it.
So I guess basically what we're trying to really say then is erotica is primarily any form of seduction
Sure. Yeah.
in
Teasing.
in any facet of the form.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talked about strippers. I'd throw the full term striptease, because anything like that I would consider to be erotica. And some of it may appeal to some people and other things to other people. Um, that it goes back to what I had said earlier about the Supreme Court justice. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. And to me, I just take that to mean that you have to define it yourself. And my definition, I tend to keep it pretty loose.
Okay. So I guess where we really gotta we haven't really talked about, but we've kind of skirted the edges on is so if someone's listening to your this right now, right, whether it's the live replay or whatever have you, and they're interested, like where are they supposed to go to learn about legitimately learn about or I would say get their real education by start getting involved in these type of communities because again, your community is not something that's widely advertised. It's not really out there. I would argue one of the previous things that we were talking about, which is those swinger sites and whatnot have you. Those to me would be more of long or short form of cheating sites. Honestly, I
Yeah.
mean, let
No, I would agree. So I'm going to assume you're talking about someone in a relationship.
actually, you know what? Let's run it both ways. So if they're in a
Okay.
relationship, you definitely by talking to you, I'm assuming right now, and we know what assume means, but regardless, first things first is we have to have a serious heart to heart with our partner, come to a
Hmm.
true understanding, and then have a set defined rules. Is by what I've gotten from your conversation. That's step one. I hit the
Know your comfort levels. Do some research, and there is stuff out there. But the very first thing needs to be have that conversation with your partner. And I've had this conversation. I've had people who've contacted me and said, how do I get my spouse to get into swinging? And my response is, you don't. Talk to them about whether they might be interested in it. um if you don't feel like your sex life is satisfying, why not? find ways to make it more fun. Bring toys into the bedroom. I mean, watch porn. And that's actually, I joked with other people about it, but if you can't watch porn with your spouse, then there's no way you can get into swinging.
No, I fully believe that. I fully believe that. If you can't be at a comfort level going, man, this guy's got a horse cock or whatever have you,
Yeah.
I totally get it. I 100% respect that. But I was waiting for your shameless plug saying, you got to buy some of my books. You got to read some of my books. I tell you in the books how you're going to do this. You were supposed to go there, but you didn't.
Well, now that you mentioned it, no, most of my books talk about couples just getting into swinging. So I've got I've got a series called Aaron's Erotic Adventures. It's about a couple that goes to a nudist resort and get into swinging. Didn't expect it to happen, but that kind of thing.
But it follows them through the journey.
It does, yeah. And actually, and I started writing it because we'd met a few couples that were trying to get into swinging for the wrong reasons. So in the book, trying not to give away too much, Erin's husband convinces her to go to a nudist resort. She doesn't want to. Their marriage has been on the rocks, but she agrees to try, thinking that it might help their marriage. They go to the resort, and then he says, well, I've got to go back to work. I got called back to work, so you've got to be here alone for a day or two. And I
That
just
just
kind
seems like
of
a bad idea altogether.
yes, and that's my point. And it doesn't, I mean, I like to write about strong female characters because I don't like victims. And maybe that's because my wife is a strong female character who, if anybody ever called her a victim, she'd rip their gonads off. But this is a story where she starts off as a victim, but then takes control of her life and basically says, screw you, our marriage has not been working. I don't want to give
Sexually
away too
empowers
much.
her.
It does. And she is shocked to find that it is empowering to her because of the way she'd been treated prior to that. So
everybody watching, understand Kyle just said his Erin Adventures is a how-to on how to begin. No, am I joking?
It's a how-to on how not to, if you want to keep your relationship strong.
Okay, well, there you go. Things you don't do.
But several of my books do deal with nudist resorts because, I mean, let's face it, getting naked is a good first step towards swinging. And I'm able to kind of get right into the plot. But one of my more popular ones is a book called The Resort. And it's something that Lily and I actually experienced, and it was fun writing it, but it's another, I turned it into how a couple gets into it. And I spend a lot of time, not a lot, but I spend time talking about, or having the characters have dialogue about what they're feeling and what they're thinking about their next steps. And would you do this? Could you do this? I use it as a way to explain some of the basics of healthy swinging. And to me, that would be the couple talk and make sure they're going into it for the right reasons. Another big mistake is we hear about couples who agree that one would take one for the team, meaning if you go out with another couple and one of the partners doesn't want to be with the other person, they will anyway because their spouse wants the other spouse.
I mean, everything you talk about just seems like that's a really bad idea. Just coming out of your
It
mouth,
is.
it just sounds like, man, that's a really bad idea when you say it out loud.
It is, but I'm amazed at how many couples fall into that or get into that trap. And it's because they haven't talked and figured out what going back to our friends who explained a lot to us. This may sound stupid, but one of the things their approach to swinging and kind of what Lily and I look at it as is it's like the ultimate massage. We've gone to get massages before. I avoid the jokes about the truck stop massage places with the happy endings, but it's not, I mean, you're not in it to fall in love with the person, with the other person. You love your spouse. So
is it more carnal, or is it more,
yes,
it means seriously, is it more like, this is just human nature being human nature and not emotion, just raw pleasure?
right. Does your wife give you back rubs?
When I ask for them, absolutely.
Okay. And our friends were looking at this as the same way. Your spouse may give you a back rub, but sometimes you may want to go to Massage Envy to get a deep tissue massage. Your spouse may do just as good a job, but it's having somebody different do it. And I'm probably explaining this terribly, but I
No.
like what you said. It is a carnal thing. We also have a lot of friends who are a lot like us that have very good sex lives with their partners and don't find a big need. Sometimes you just want to, but if sex with your spouse is really good, then you don't have to go looking.
No, I totally understand that philosophy, and I totally agree. So let's talk a little bit about your show. So we said we talked to other authors, but I've talked to you a little bit. You have other types of people on your show too. I mean, it's not just
Yeah.
authors. I mean, you even have people from your own type of community that are on there that do different things. So if someone wants to go listen to your podcast, what are they going to expect to find?
We keep it a variety. So there are a couple of shows where we've done excerpts from my books because Lily does narration. So 10 of my books are on ACX or Amazon Audible. So you can get the Audible version. I would caution you, if you get those, don't listen to them if you're driving in traffic, because I actually had somebody write me and say they had to pull over when they were listening because he and his wife were enjoying the story too much. But anyway,
So which one should me and my wife start with?
I would start with The Resort.
Okay. I'm gonna go get that one off of Audible tonight. Don't you worry about that.
Okay. Well, and I would also, if you're into, I wrote 2 Halloween stories, the Succubus Queen series, and they're just, to me, they were like 80s campy horror films where the girls were always getting their boobs out.
Yeah, you can say anything you want about the 80 horror movies, but it was always sexualized. I mean, I think that kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
twisted me and you in our generations. I mean, really, I mean, I don't know. I
20
just
minutes. I was going to say 20 minutes into any one of those movies, and there had to be at least one set of boobs coming out.
absolutely. I mean, that's one of the reasons why you watch them to begin with.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the problems with today is everyone. I think there's an overcorrection, in how people look at things. Listen, it's real simple. As far as I'm concerned, there's nothing wrong with sex or something being sexualized. I mean, honestly. And I have a hard time when people sit there and say, "Well, you're looking at that woman and you're sexualizing her." Well, she's dressed nice, she's really looks good, and you know what? It's human nature. I mean, what am I
Mm-hmm.
supposed to do? Close my eyes when I walk around? My wife's supposed to say, "Oh, she doesn't look like that guy." I mean, he looks handsome, he looks hot. I mean, seriously. I mean, I think it's become such an insecurity that people just try to push it on other people. Listen, there are some. I mean, let's say there's some men that are truly just absolutely sexy or handsome or whatever have you. Why do you think that we have these actors and everyone else and become the sexiest man alive, the sexiest woman alive? Well, you know what? I can't understand why it's bad for me and you to sexualize something, why it's okay for magazines.
Yeah.
right? It's okay for them to sexualize. Well, you know what? It really comes down to something really simple. If you have a problem with someone appreciating the way you look, you have the problem. It's your insecurity. Seriously. Half the time women dress up for women, they say that. I don't care what you say. You're walking around, there's men involved, there's women involved. We're all going to look. We're all going to have our comments or our inner thoughts. And I think the only thing that separates you, Kyle, from other people and being in the lifestyle is just that insecurity.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would also say, what you were talking about just then, you mentioned inner thoughts. I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at a man or a woman and admiring them physically, at all. And I totally agree with you there. Where I would draw the line are the people who overly sexual, like if a guy went up to a woman and just kind of looked her up and down and was blatant about it and making her uncomfortable, that's where I would draw a line. Or for that matter, a woman doing that to a guy. Although I don't know many guys who would object to it. So
I was about to say, I mean, seriously, I'm like, no, I don't see that happen. But that's also, I think, a big problem, with society of how we've managed with the media and whatnot have you to really change the purpose of what things are. First and foremost, God or nature or whatever made us this way. We are supposed to look at people, whether whatnot have you, the opposite sex, and you are supposed to have those thoughts. Why? Because it's called human nature to keep humanity going. I mean, you want to procreate, you want to do this. If it wasn't given to you one way or the other, I mean, seriously. Now, obviously, there's control issues. I totally agree with that. But today's society, it's just like everything's no, everything's wrong, and
you're talking about something that just jumped into my head. One of the things that Lily and I love about the nudist lifestyle is that there's a complete absence of leering that goes on. That overly sexual staring, it just doesn't happen at nudist resorts.
I'm sorry, but at least the first couple of times, you got to be looking. I mean, obviously, you were with your wife for the first time. I'm just saying in general. I mean, there's got to be some looking. I mean, if you've never been there, you're looking.
You're going to glance absolutely. But what most people find who don't get who and I'll be honest, I've never seen anybody kicked out of a nudist resort for this. I've heard about it, but the leering, it's almost like you walk through the gates, then it doesn't feel comfortable to stare or to look at somebody, like sexy woman walking by. I'm going to notice her, but I'm not going to stare at her. As one of the running, I don't know if it's the right way to say it as a running joke, but one of the things that a lot of naturists would say is eliminating bikinis at the pool eliminates a lot of over sexualization. And it's true. If you go to most nudist resorts or clothing optional, they say no suits at the pool. And I can say, from personal experience, there are really attractive people at the pool, but you lose sight of their physical. And if you talk to another couple, you get to know them a little better. And Lily and I joked the first couple of times we went, if we would have a conversation with somebody, our eyes were always chin level and higher. But I don't know. It's kind of it's hard to explain unless you actually experience it.
No, listen, I get it. There's a little bit of a comfort factor, or the want or need not to make the other party uncomfortable in that situation. So I mean, if you're already uncomfortable with your first time. I mean, you're really not looking to be like that idiot who's staring anyway. I totally get it.
It's a
I'm
mutual comfort thing too, because you find a lot. I don't, unless you are a porn star with a, porn equipment, you probably don't want everybody in the world staring at your stuff.
I don't care. I've never cared. I've never
but
cared.
that's the
Listen,
thing.
I'm
You
average.
can't,
I'm okay with it. I'm fine. I've never had that whole image thing. I just never have. I really don't care. It's not about.
then you'd do fine at a nudist resort.
I probably would. That's why my wife won't go probably, but but I don't. It was no. I guess maybe a little bit more mental toughness. I've been told no more in my life and overcome no more in my life, so I don't. No, and other things don't bother me. Never have. Never have.
Mhm.
I've just always been like that. When I owned a martial arts school, I was in Florida. City of Bel Air gave me a contract, and they tried to rescind the contract. And I said, well, then I'll just sue you. And they said, well, then you have to have an instructor here every day you're supposed to be here. So for a year, I paid someone to go there and sit there for a year, twice a week, to sit there. Paid them. I didn't care because I was going to sue them. You weren't going to tell me no. I made it up to the instructor. We had no side time for each other to make up for his thing, and I paid him for his time. So he went there, practiced on his own, and then we had our own sessions. But I just one of those guys. When you tell me no, I'm going to find a way to do it. I don't take no very, very well. Not to have a problem with authority. It's just how you present the word no doesn't work well for me. So I've always had those different issues. But like I said, I'm a little twisted. I've already mentioned it. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. So I guess what we need to do here, though, is we probably need for people to start looking at you, get your books. I mean, really get into this. And I think what we need to do, Kyle, is let this video simmer here with people.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I think
I would say, sorry to interrupt, but
nope.
because I haven't been plugging myself probably enough, but go to Amazon, look up Kyle Canon, and you'll go to my author page and you can see all the books that I've written. I have my Kyle Canon fiction at gmail.com email address there. So I welcome people asking me questions or sending me comments about my books or just anything. My website is kylecanonfiction.com. You can go there, or Lily and I have a podcast called Speak Seductively, and we are on all the major hosting sites right now, or at least 10 of them.
Well, I definitely, like I said, I'll make sure you get plugged. We're doing the live one now. We're recording it, but I definitely will be doing a new intro tomorrow, and I will definitely be plugging you and making sure the description's in there. But what I'd like to do is absolutely put the video up, and let's have everyone who's listening, because again, this also goes up on the podcast, and who isn't watching, well, let's get some comments, let's get some feedback, and let's get that stuff to you. And then maybe, depending on the feedback we get, we could follow up with a good second show where we've got you answering audience questions, right?
I'd love to. It'd be fun. I may even try to get Lily involved.
Hey, more the merrier. So what I'm going to do is we're going to end it here. We're going to, but I want you to stick around for a moment, and we're going to make the magic happen after this. So thank you so much.
Sounds good.